even if you have not read court judgments, I'm sure all of you have read affidavits that are printed in newspapers, right? And you read that and you wonder, who writes like this? That is a language that none of us use, right? That is, and for the longest time, I used to constantly joke with my lawyer friends and the few judges that I could speak casually with, that why do you write in a language that is so difficult to understand, right? But over the years, I respect what they do. Because if you look at, this is the same problem that you have with religious books, right? Why is it that religious texts are written in this complicated, formal, classical style? If you look at it this way, it makes sense. The judgment is not for today, right? Because when we say, why don't you write in a language that all of us understand, and it is the commonly used language, what we are saying is, why don't you write like we speak? What we forget is that the way we speak right now is just about 5 to 10 years old. So what I write, if I write like the way I speak today, it's good for a newspaper report, which tomorrow is nobody's going to read. For immediate consumption, it makes sense. But judgments, court judgments are there for posterity. Someone 50 years later, someone 100 years later should be able to read it and there should be no confusion. And the only way you can guarantee that is if you write in the classical style, or if you write in a very formal language, because the style of writing formal language will not change over these years. The way you and I speak, the colloquial style that we speak in, that will change. But not how these formal languages are written. So if you read a judgment from 100 years back, written by the British, the language reads almost like the court judgments that you read today. And the wonderful thing about that is that there can be no confusion. Why do the court judgments or court records or affidavits for that matter keep repeating every point? Like when they say, let's say they're just putting a judgment on my case, whatever. Pema Wangchuk Dorji, consulting editor, Summit. Now every time they mention my name, they'll write this entire detail that this is the Pema Wangchuk we are talking about, the consulting editor and whatever. And then they'll put in brackets, okay, public witness number 2 from here on, to make it shorter. But the reason that they do it is that there is no confusion, not no confusion today, no confusion in the future when people read this, so that people understand this absolutely, the arguments, when they read it later. And that is where our role comes in. Because our reader cannot be told that judgment in the court language. It is our job to now read that judgment and put it in a language that people understand without opening the dictionary. And for English it's very easy, because most of the court proceedings and the judgments are in English. So all we need to do is make it, it's like Prezi writing, right? We just kind of simplify it and put the reasons there. What I really miss in Sikkim, and what I've not seen enough of in the 30 years or so that I've been working here, is I don't see enough court reporting in Nepali, right? Because that is what is required. The vernacular audience needs to read the court, what the courts are deciding, in a language that they'll understand. I don't know this for sure, but I've worked with Nepali newspapers, I've had friends who have worked in that sector. What they normally do in our copy editing rooms is that they'll find a scholar type of person who writes Nepali like Sanskrit, I think, and they'll tell him, well, this is a document, since you are used to reading academic papers, court judgment, please write me a report on this. And that guy will write a report which is again in a language that none of the readers will understand, right? That's been my experience. Now why I say that's a problem is because the bigger audience is in Nepali. That's what the people read and understand better in Sikkim than any other language. We report it in English. It's a very elitist audience, right? Some lawyers will read it. Maybe the judge will read it. Some officers will read it. But the people in the villages will not read it. And who will explain the judgment to them? Some politician, who will reduce it down to a slogan or a jumla, as we call it nowadays. And that is what they'll understand. They will not understand what was done. I mean, we see that happening right now, right? with that whole income tax Sikkim subject issue that is going on. People are just making claims. People are just making claims. Some of the claims are laughable. Some make sense. But these are all just claims. There is a judgment. I can't understand when there is a judgment in place, why can you not just quote the judgment and explain it to the people simply? People don't learn to separate this. That would not happen. That would not happen if, as journalists, we had done our jobs. If we had explained the judgment and all parts of it in a language that people understand. Today's time,